Hello, this is Tom, and I'm going to give an overview of the inventory control module in Sage X3 ERP software. Our inventory control module obviously interfaces with all other modules within our ERP system. It talks to our sales order module, our purchasing module, manufacturing module. It also can feed our fixed asset module as well. There's a lot of features built into the X3 inventory control module, and I'm going to highlight some of those today. The first thing that I talk about when we talk about the inventory control module is our item master. I'm kind of going to walk through our item master real quickly and point out some key attributes on the item master that control functionality and features, activating or deactivating certain features. So we'll talk about that first of all. When we talk about our item master in X3, we have to talk about how it's structured. There's actually two levels to our item master. We have our products, our item master, which is the top level, and this item master product page is global across our entire organization. So we set up a product once, and then we can use it at every plant, every distribution warehouse, and any manufacturing location. So we set up the product once. But then wherever we want to store that product, wherever we want to manufacture that product, we would set up a product site record specific to that location. So if we have a manufacturing plant, we would set a product site record for the products that are going to live there, the raw materials, the finished goods that we're producing, and we set site-specific attributes on that product site record. We can have different safety stock at each warehouse. We can have different lead times at each warehouse, and a number of other settings. And we'll talk about that in a second. I just want to make sure that I explain that we have a two-level item master. A top level is global across our entire organization, and then anything that needs to be site specific is defined on our product site record. So let's look at these screens and see what I'm talking about. So we're going to go into our top level, our product page, which is global across all sites. And this is where we set up our item numbers, our descriptions, our UPCs, unit of measures. We can have suppliers on our product record, which would be global, but X3 also lets you define specific suppliers for each site. So if we have a warehouse on the East Coast and another one on the West Coast, we might want different suppliers for each warehouse. And we can set that, or we can set a global at the product master as well. So you have some flexibility there. So on our left list is our item master master data. So here's all our products in our left list. And then here's our data entry window in the middle where we can specify our individual products. We're looking at this palette right now. So here's our product number, here's our description, and we have some other information down here. We can put a UPC code in and some other things. One thing I want to talk about first of all is our product category. So in X3, each product needs to be assigned a product category. And these product categories are user definable. X3 out of the box comes with about 15 or 20 different product categories. And typically we create a product category for each specific site type of inventory. For example, we might have raw materials as a product category. And let's actually jump into our product category window. So I'm going to use the jump icon, go into our product category page, and kind of look at some of these and give you an example of different product categories. So here is our product category master list. On the left hand side, you can see we actually have about 6 different raw material product categories because we're tracking different types of raw materials. We're tracking raw materials that are lot managed, raw materials with potency, etc., etc. So we could just have one product category for all raw materials, or we can create multiple product categories for each type of raw materials. And what we can do on these product categories is we kind of predefined our item master. So we can go in, and these fields on this product category are the same fields we fill in on a new product. When we choose the product category, X3 takes all the product category settings and applies them to our new record so we don't have to rekey everything in. So if we have raw materials that we're tracking in units, and then we create a new product, all our unit of measures are filled in for us, all our rules are filled in, all our GL defaults are filled in, etc., etc. So this is kind of a time-saving feature. One thing I'll mention on the product category is we define where these products are coming from and where they're going. We can determine whether we're buying these, selling these, manufacturing these, etc. And then when we create those products on the item master, when we choose this product category, it limits what we can use those products for. So I'm not going to see products when I'm trying to do a sales order. If this product is not able to be sold, I'm not going to see those products pulling up in my product list when I am creating a sales order. So it kind of facilitates some of our data entry in other areas of X3, because X3 will apply these filter rules to limit what we're seeing when we're entering a transaction. If we can't purchase a product, it's not going to let us see those products when we're entering a purchase order. So our product category is just a way to segregate our inventory so it's easier to search and manage inventory, but it's also a template for creating new products. So when I create a new product, let's go ahead and do this. I click on the new button, and the first thing that X3 is going to make me do is choose my product category. And so when I choose the product category, let's use a raw material. Let's just do a generic raw material. What's going to happen is all our unit of measure fields are going to be filled in. Oops, it's not going to let me jump down to those fields. Well, we can look at them real quick, but we can't put our cursor in those fields. All our unit of measures are filled in from our product category. Our financial coding is filled in from our product category, etc., etc. So this makes data entry a lot easier and a lot more consistent because we're following the rules for that product category. So let's just say that this is a wood slat, 1 inch by 4 inch by 8 feet. Something like that. And then we can of course put our UPC code in. If we're doing barcoding and scanning, we can have UPC numbers. We could put our supplier UPC number in if we're doing that. I'm going to actually cancel this and just look at some of our existing products and just kind of go through some of the features that are interesting. We'll just bring up a metal brace. It doesn't matter what we look at. I just want to talk about some of the features on the item master itself. Number one thing I've mentioned is these statistical groups. These statistical groups are user definable. You can have up to 6 created. But what this lets you do is create groupings beyond the product category to segregate your inventory. So I could say this was a furniture product, and these can be hierarchical. So group 1 you set first, and then group 2 could be subset of group 1. So here is a chair or a stool. We'll say this is a chair, and then we can say something else. There's not a category 3 for that relates to category 2, but you get the idea of that. We can create these groups. They can be hierarchical, and then we can use these for reporting and analyzing inventory or transactions based on statistical groups. Another feature on the product master is we can say whether this product is managed or not. Stock management, yes or no. If we say not managed, it means we're not keeping track accounts. It's a non-stock item. It's something that a supply maybe that we're just expensing. Things that we want to put on purchase orders and purchase, but we're not going to bring them into stock. We're just going to expense those items, or they could be service items, repair items, things like that. Now, one thing I'll mention is X3 does let you have negative stock, so we can go less than 0 on stock. So sometimes certain processes we need to use things before they're received in, or we need to put them on a truck and send them to a customer before we've completed our work order building these products. So we can set up our products to go negative if we want. Now that requires some extra work when you do that, so that when inventory does come in, you go back and close out those transactions that had that caused negative stock. But it is available if we need it. Traceability would be if we turn on lot management. If we want to track all the lot history and whatnot, we can turn that on. Potency, if we have any chemical products, food products, anything like that that we want to track, we can turn on potency for certain items. Management mode, available stock, or by order. What this is saying is that do we want to track inventory globally, or do we want to associate one sales order with one work order? So it's kind of an individual, more of a discrete manufacturing setup where we get a sales order in, and then we're going to relate that to one specific work order to fulfill that sales order. Sometimes discrete manufacturing, we turn that on, but typically if we have common products that multiple customers are buying, and we always want to make sure that we have products available and we have safety stock on hand, we leave this as available stock. but we can flip that around, and we can do that for individual products too. It's not a global setting, it's a product setting. But these are some of the things that we set on our product categories. So when we create these new products, they're all filled in correctly, and I don't have to choose these things. Typically, when I'm creating a new product, I'm going to give it an item number, a description, maybe fill in the UPC code. One thing I'll mention here is we do have multiple descriptions. We have a description 1, 2, and 3. We can use all those. But then everything else after that typically should be standardized within that product category, so you don't have to fill in all these fields. We do have lot management capabilities. We can turn on lot management. We can track lots and sublots. We can track serial numbers in X3. We can track expiration dates. So if we are building products that expire at a certain time or have to be consumed within a certain time, whenever we create a new lot, X3 tracks that expiration date and lets us know when we are coming up on that expiration date. So that's built in. We have version control built in. We can create versions of these products. So if we have a different bill of material for a finished good, every time we change our bill of material or our routing, we can create a new version of that finished good, and X3 will track each of those versions in inventory. Now, when we're talking about raw materials, we can have different families of raw materials, and I think I just have a generic material cost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you can create as many different material categories or families as you wish, and you can define what they're called. A lot of people might use like a component or raw material and packaging, so they can separate the raw material cost from the packaging cost. And then when you're rolling your standard cost, or when you're building this product in a work order, X3 tracks those families until you can report on that and see what percentage came from each family. So it's kind of a nice feature to drill in and fine tune your cost and see what's going on. I'll skip a little bit of this. We do have allergen tracking if that's important. Dairy, this is more for food processors if we need to track milk, eggs, fruit, peanuts, things like that in our products. But let's come down to something that's kind of interesting, or kind of a nice feature, is this unit of measure. I'm going to flip back over and look at a finished good, because I should have some examples of some finished good with some various unit of measures. I had changed something on the previous record, so X3 was asking me if I wanted to abandon my changes, and I did. Oops, let me just go into finished good here. I'm looking for something that has some different pack units, some options that I can show that are a little bit more interesting. Yeah, here we go. Some of these food products have different unit of measures. X3 is very powerful with unit of measures and converting unit of measures. Here's an example of a finished good. So this is a product that we're producing, and we're stocking it in cases. And our default sales unit measure is also cases, but we also have the option of selling it in pallets. And when we sell in pallets, you can see we have a conversion factor here. This would take 16 cases and put them on a pallet. So on our sales order, we can sell 1 pallet of this product, and X3 knows that we're taking 16 cases out of inventory. So X3 does a lot of those unit and measure conversions. We do that a lot of times with purchasing units, where we might be purchasing things in pallets or drums or something like that, but stocking them in a smaller unit of measure, eaches or something like that. So we have that feature built into X3 of the unit measure conversions and whatnot. So we always have our stocking unit measure. That's when we're manufacturing or putting it into our inventory. This is going to be the lowest level usually. But when we're purchasing or selling it, we can have different unit measures, and X3 will convert that automatically. And when we're selling it, we also can have, or even purchasing it, we can have multiple unit of measures. So we can purchase it different ways, and X3 will do that conversion back to our stock unit of measure. So all that is built into the system. I'm going to skip down a little bit and look at some more information down here. Here's my sales setup for this product, where I put my base price in. Now we can do a couple different things with this. We can put a price that we put in, like a list price all the time, or we can mark this up off of our purchase price. We could do a purchase price plus 20% if we wanted to. So every time our supplier changes their price, our sales price is automatically increased. We also have some other settings on the sales side. We can put a minimum margin in here, so that when we sell this product, we always want to make X percent, 12%, 15% on this product. And if we enter a sales order below that minimum margin, it will be put on hold, and maybe a manager will be notified to approve that or whatnot. So we can set some minimum margins in the system and have X3 watch that for us automatically. The after sales is for warranty and follow-up type items, so we can do like a warranty on this product for so long, and then we can track the cost against this if we're selling these products. So that is nice for some customers. Then we can set up our customer information too. So here's our customer information for this product. We can have a customer in here. We can put the customer's product number on this product. So our item number is FIN301, but in this situation we have this customer Urban Cycle, and if I click on that one, whoops, they didn't have a product number there. We'll go back up to this first one. So this first customer, here is their product number. So on their sales order, their sales invoice, they would see their product number for our product instead of our product number. So sometimes that's important for your larger customers that force those rules on you, that we do have that built in automatically. And sometimes they might want specific packaging, and so we can set up the packaging that that customer needs for this product, maybe a certain pallet configuration or something like that. So now let's go back to the raw materials and we'll look at some of the purchasing side. Whoops, I typed the wrong value in there. So let's just look at some of our raw materials. We have some purchasing information here I want to point out. So we can set our default reorder lead time. This would be globally if this is the same reorder lead time across all our sites within the company. At our product site record, we can change the reorder lead time for each product site, but this will be like a default across the entire company. One interesting feature here, received product. Now this is always checked if this is a stock managed product, meaning we're tracking inventory counts of this product. But if this is a non-stock item, we can go in and set this received product flag. And what that means is that when we do a purchase order for this product, saying it's a non-stock product, it's like supplies that we're expensing, we can still go in and allow the site to do the receipt of that non-stock PO. Now it doesn't put anything in inventory, but it tells our accounting department that that non-stock PO has been received or that service has been done, and it's okay for accounting, corporate accounting, to go ahead and pay that bill, that invoice, that supplier invoice when it comes in. So sometimes that eliminates some paperwork back and forth when the corporate has to call, hey, this was a non-stock item, did you receive this service, did you receive these supplies? Well, by turning on this received product flag, then automatically we can track that we did receive those, and then it's okay to pay that invoice. So it's kind of a nice feature for some people. Matching tolerance is a nice feature too. This lets you do two-way or three-way match on the PO, the receipt, and the supplier invoice. And then you can set this up to only be warnings, or it can actually block the transaction until it's fixed. So I'm just going to drill into this matching tolerance real quick, and let's just go look at this 10% warning. You can see here we can have a lot of control over these settings, but I can say that quantity shortage, if it's 10% short, it's going to be a warning message. If it exceeds quantity by 10%, it's also going to be a warning. But you can determine whether these messages, these matching tolerances, are just warning messages or if they're actually blocking the transaction. If they're blocking the transactions, say for example on a supplier invoice is coming in and the invoice quantity is 10% more than what the receipt was, if I say this is a blocked transaction, I can't validate or post that supplier invoice. I can enter it and it's going to sit there. I won't be posted, so I can't pay it. I can't do anything until it is actually fixed or someone with authority can override that tolerance block and approve that invoice. So this is built in. You can set up as many of these tolerance rules as you wish. There's just some examples of 5%, 10% with warnings and blocks, and that's about it for right now. But you can create as many as you want, and you can apply those to either products or suppliers. So if I have one supplier that's always overbilling me or something like that, I would probably put that 10% rule on the supplier, so every invoice that they get in, I make sure that they are billing me appropriately. And then of course here is my purchase base price I can put in here if I wish. I also can generate price list outside of the item master and use those as well. But this would be like maybe my standard cost if it's always going to be the same. Oops, let me go back to my purchasing screen because there's a couple more features on the purchasing section that are kind of nice features. our landed cost coefficient. So if we want to add landed cost to this product, so say freight cost runs on average 3%, so we might want to say that we're going to add 3% to this every time we receipt it in, and that would increase our inventory cost, and we would put that 3% to a GL expense cost, freight expense or something like that. But then we update our on-hand value or the value of this product as it comes in, and then we use that in our further calculations in manufacturing, our standard cost calculations, to always include that freight charge in that cost roll up. The other thing we could do is a fixed cost per unit. So I canceled that change. Let me go back to our purchasing section. Our fixed cost per unit, I could add $1.50 per unit if I wanted to. So I can either use a coefficient or a fixed cost per unit if I want to. And that's typically, we use these for domestic landed cost charges that are more stable, more one tier typically. Usually when we're doing the landed cost, it's because of the freight charge and there's one carrier involved and that's it. X3 does have an advanced landed cost. I call it landed cost on steroids, and that's this cross structure field. And this is more used for importing products from overseas, because when you start importing products, now you're going to have multiple charges to you, unless you're going through a brokerage or someone's handling that for you. But if you're doing it yourself, you're going to have customs, you're going to have insurance, you're going to have brokerage, you're going to have vessels, and then you're going to have another freight charge to deliver it to your warehouse. And so this cost structure is built to handle all those costs as one transaction on the landed cost side. So here's an example of a cost structure where I can have main transport unloading, import customs, post-transportation insurance. I can set up all these individual fees that cost for me to import this product. And I can do this either by a fixed amount, or based by weight, or based by dollar amount. But anyway, you set up all these individual charges, and then you set the formula how these things are calculated. Fixed amount or per unit. You have a lot of options here. But basically, once you create all these individual charges, when you create that purchase order and you apply this cost structure to the purchase order, X3 figures out what it's going to cost you to get that product to your warehouse. And it's going to add that cost to your product, number one. But number two, it lets you, when these invoices come in, it lets you actually assign or kind of true up these estimates with those actual invoices. So when you get a invoice in for this main transport, you can do what's called a complementary invoice against my product receipt and true up this estimate. So if this main transport was calculation mode, there's some schedule for this for the freight cost, but say this was $1,000, but the bill was actually $1,100. When I go ahead and apply that complementary invoice, if that inventory is still sitting in my warehouse, it's going to update the cost of that inventory with my actual invoice from this transportation company. So it's very powerful to apply multiple costs to one receipt and then track which one of those invoices coming in are still outstanding, and then true up those estimates with the actual invoice. I'm not going to talk about that much today, but it is a very nice feature when you're importing and you have all these extra costs that you need to track and apply to your products. So that's the cost structure feature in X3. So let's go back and go down a little bit further. So here is where I could set up my suppliers area. That is where I can set up my suppliers for this product. So I'm going to go to a product that already has some suppliers on it. And again, we can put our suppliers like we did with our customer, where we had our customer part number. When we have our suppliers in here, we have our supplier part number too, and on our purchase order, the supplier part number will print so that they know which part that they need to send us, so there's no confusion, no misshipping of parts and whatnot. So we have our supplier part number, and that will print out. And then we can have different landed costs. So in the previous, we were looking at the landed cost, kind of a global setup across my entire organization. We actually can refine that and have landed costs attached to each of my suppliers. So I might have different freight charges from each supplier. I might have domestic, international, so I might have a cost structure on one supplier and not on another. So we can track those landed costs on a supplier by supplier basis too if we need to. And then of course we can track the dimensions of the product. And this is kind of important in purchasing. When we're trying to fill a container or a truck, X3 will track the volume and the weight of the product. So when I'm building up a purchase order, I can see how much volume I need, how much weight it is, so I can try to get a container as full as possible without going over a container. So X3 will help me with that if I set up these dimensions in X3. So those are the main features of the Item Master. A couple things. We talked about the unit measure, setting up our customers or suppliers. I didn't talk too much about the financial section. Of course, we can set up different tax rules for each product, different GL codes that drive this to the GL for different sales accounts or different cost of goods account, or however we want to track these products to the GL. We can do that. But the biggest thing is up here at the top is setting up some of these parameters, whether it's a stock managed product, whether we're tracking lots, whether we're tracking serial numbers, those types of things. And that is about it for the Item Master. But now one thing I want to drill into is actually look at a product site record. So remember, this Product Master is the highest level that we have, and now we can create site specific or warehouse specific product site records. So let's look at some of those settings at the warehouse. So I'm going to go in and look at a product that I just set up this morning. That was our pallet product. So this is a finished good. We're building pallets, and this is something we're selling. So let's go look at our product site record. So I've set this up at 2 warehouses. So I have this at warehouse 11, which is Nova Scotia, and I have it at 12, which is St. Quentin. So we have 2 different warehouses where they were storing this product at. So we can set different parameters at each warehouse. We can have different ABC classes. We can have different counting modes, how we're going to do cycle counting, annual counts, some other things. We can have default locations. Where do I want to store this product? Well, each warehouse has different locations, and so we can set the location at each warehouse to be different if we wish. And some other things in here too. But the thing that really gets interesting is on the planning tab, is where we set how we want to store this product and our safety stock on here. So I'm set at our Nova Scotia plant, our safety stock is only 10, and we get to 20, down to 20, we're going to place a reorder, and our maximum stock is 500, so we're not going to go over 500. And then at our St. Quentin plant, I said our safety stock is 100, and we don't want to go over 500. I also added a technical lot of 32 and EOQ of 640. So in X3, what they're talking about in technical lot, this is typically something that I can't break when I'm either going to produce this or purchase this. So if I'm producing something, I always use the example of an oven. I can put so many loaves of bread in an oven if I'm baking bread. And so if I can put 40 loaves in the oven, my technical lot may be 40. My EOQ may be something a little bit larger. Maybe when I'm mixing bread, I'm mixing enough for 400 loaves. So typically when I'm doing baking bread, I want to bake all the batter or all the dough that I mixed, and so my economic order quantity might be 400. That lets my maxing and my mixing size kind of make one batch and then produce it all. But my technical lot, the thing I don't want to break would be how many loaves I can put in the oven. I don't want to put 1 loaf in the oven because that's not very efficient. So if I have room for 40, I want to put 40 in there. So that's kind of what the technical lot and EOQ is. EOQ would be your most cost advantage way of building this product or purchasing this product. I might want to buy a whole pallet of the product. So if I'm buying a raw material, maybe there's 20 cases per pallet. So maybe if 20 cases per pallet, maybe my EOQ, I always want to buy in multiples of 20 so I get full pallets of that product. But my technical lot could be 1 case. Maybe within 1 case there is 20 smaller cases or 20 smaller units. So I could buy 1 small unit, but that requires my supplier to open a case and sell me 1 unit. Well, they don't want to do that. They might give me better pricing on that whole case. So anyway, technical lot EOQ, depending on if it's a raw material or finished good or semi-finished good, how I'm using these things. But this is what X3 is set up for. So when MRP runs, it's always going to give me a suggestion and a multiple of my technical lot, because that's assuming that I don't want to break this technical lot. Technical lot could be 1 if there isn't 1. If it's just 1 case and I can buy 1 of these and there's 1 per case, I can just set technical lot of 1 and it's going to give me whatever I need to purchase. but this can if you set up the technical lots and EOQs, it can help you be more efficient and maybe reduce some of your cost. So another thing that I'll mention on this product site record, I can say how am I receiving this product at each location. So I'm saying at warehouse NA001, this is my manufacturing plan. So when X3 says I need more of this pallet, it's going to tell me that I need to make it in my plant. And if I go over to my other place, this is more of a distribution warehouse, and if I am running low there, it's going to say that I need to do an intersite transfer, and I'm transferring this from Nova Scotia to my San Quentin warehouse. So you set up these product site records of where you're going to produce these products, where you're going to store these products. Now I might have 6 other warehouses, but if I'm not storing these pallets at those other 6 warehouses, I don't create those product site records, and the X3 will never tell me that I can store it or sell that product from those warehouses. In fact, it prevents me from doing that. So I only create product site records where a product is actually going to live, and then I set up these rules, safety stock, suggestion types, things like that, of how I want to control my quantities, or how I want X3 to control my quantities for me. Because obviously once we get all these rules set up, then we can run MRP, and MRP is going to tell me that I need to do intersite transfers, or I need to create work orders, or etc., based on all these settings on my product site record on my planning section. Some other information on here I'll talk about real quickly. I can set up managers for this product, planners or buyers, and so when I'm going in and running MRP or looking at things, I can automatically have it assigned to a person. Sometimes that's used, sometimes it's not, but it's a way to maybe segregate or give different people responsibility for certain products. We can set up our bill of lading classes. This will feed into our bill of lading, and X3 will generate our bill of lading when we're doing deliveries to our customers if we have our freight class and national manufacturer freight classification set up on these products. We can set up container capacities. So if this is a pallet, we can define a pallet on here and say how many units go per pallet. This kind of helps me automatically do packaging for my sales order and whatnot. As I mentioned before, we can set up locations where we're going to store this product, where we're going to deliver it from, where we're going to pick it to, things like that. That's kind of tied into the other areas of X3, sales orders, purchasing, etc., etc. And of course we can turn on location management, and we also can turn on container management. When we're turning on container management, that is going into our license plating in X3. So X3 has the ability to create a license plate for all my products, and we'll talk about that later on. So anything else on the product site, let me just go through real quick. So if I go to my stock section on my product site record, I see what my on-hand quantities currently are. And you'll notice that I actually have this internal A, Q, and R. And what these refer to in X3, these are called stock statuses. And if we use quality control in X3, the quality control module uses these statuses. A means it's available stock. Q means it's in QC hold. It needs to be inspected and either passed or failed. And then R status means it's been rejected. It doesn't meet our standards. We can't use it. And now this could be a raw material coming into my dock. If a raw material comes in and that product is flagged to need a quality control inspection, when it comes in, it's put in the Q status, and it's going to stay in that Q status until my QC department looks at it, approves it, and if they approve it and it passes its test, it's going to be A stock, and then I can use that raw material in a work order, or I can sell it to a customer. If it fails a test, it goes into the R status, and then if I have an R status, I either have to do a rework on it, or I can destroy it, or I can send it back to my supplier for credit. So depending on those quality control tests, X3 is going to automatically move that product from Q to R to A and whatnot. And you can set up rules in X3 of the Q stock if you want to use Q stock to allocate to sales orders before the test is done, things like that. But I think it's a little bit more involved. I'm not going to talk about that too much, other than say A stock is my good stock that I can sell to a customer or use in a work order is typically how that's set up. And then we have our allocations in X3. So X3 does allocations, which is kind of a reservation system on our inventory. So what this is saying is we have 1,741 units on hand at this location, our NA011, our Nova Scotia plant. But we already have 75 of these allocated Now this is a finished good, so when we're talking about allocations of a finished good, that means it's probably on a sales order going to a customer. So we have a sales order out there, and that sales order we allocated inventory for. So we really don't have 1741 available. We have 1741 minus the 75, and that's what's available to be sold or delivered to other customers. But we have one sales order out there, or maybe a couple sales orders that are reserving 75, and X3 is not going to let us do anything else with those 75 pallets except deliver them on those sales orders. If you come down here, I can see some more information that I actually have sales orders for 175 units. So I have some sales orders that are not allocated. And typically we set up rules in X3 of allocating maybe 7 days before shipment. If I have a sales order that's going to ship 3 months from now, I don't want to allocate stock today to that sales order because it would reserve my inventory today for that sales order's 3 months from now. So allocation is a nice feature. It guarantees that we're reserving inventory for those sales orders that need to ship in the short term. But you have to be a little bit careful how you set those rules up because you don't want to allocate or tie up inventory for a long period of time if that sales order is not shipping. Sometimes you might though, if this is a long lead time product and it's hard to get or it takes a long time to get the product, you might actually be doing allocations out 3 months, but you set those allocation rules up by product category or by individual product, and then we can automate those allocations typically, and then you only need to go in and mess with allocations if you want to override the default settings. In this situation, say that we had everything allocated, but we had a rush order from our best customer come in today. Well, I'd go into one of my sales orders probably and deallocate from a not very important customer and take that product and allocate it, so I made sure I made my best customer happy. So you can override those allocation rules, but we kind of set up what you normally want to do on a day-to-day basis, and we let X3 handle the allocations for us. And then also X3 is also going to track those shortages we have. So if we're allocating to all our sales orders that are shipping within the next 7 days, we have dashboards and reports we can look at that have shortages. So we can look at all the sales orders that don't have enough product to ship within the next 7 days because they're in shortage because we didn't have an allocation. And then we can make sure that we scramble and try to get those things done. You can see over here we have detail shortage, global shortage. The difference is when we set up the product, when we set up these rules, we say whether we're going to globally allocate or detail allocate. And what global means, we're just looking at our on-hand quantity and reserving X number of products or allocating X number. When we do detail allocations, we're allocating specific lot numbers or serial numbers to a sales order or to a work order. If we're doing global allocations, we don't care about what lot we're allocating to a sales order. We're just saying, hey, reserve 75 of these for a certain sales order. So depending on whether we're using lot number or serial numbers would determine whether we're doing global allocations or detail allocations maybe. And then I can also see what's sitting on my dock. So when X3 brings products in, they can put them on your dock, and it's a special location type. And so X3 tracks that to know what's sitting there waiting to be put away. Because sometimes if you have products coming in that need to be turned around real quickly and shipped back out, maybe you don't actually formally receive them and put them into your normal storage. Maybe you're going to grab them off the dock and ship them back out. But this gives us a look at what's sitting at the dock waiting to be put away and know where it's at, things like that. If we're sending products out, semi-finished or raw materials out to a subcontractor, actually will track that for us as well. So we can have products going out if they need a certain finish or certain packaging or maybe some heat treating or welding or something like that that we don't do internally. We can set up a subcontract order, send out our material, have value added to it, and then come back into our inventory. So we can track those subcontractor stock as well. We can loan our stock to a customer, so we can do a shipment to a customer and not invoice them at first. This could be sometimes if they're renting equipment from us, or sometimes maybe it's consignment inventory. Maybe you have storage at your customer that you're putting products there, and then they just pull out of that location and they tell you how much they used each month, and then you bill them later. We can track that as well. When we're doing intersite transfers, we can track in-transit stock. So when I'm shipping between plant 11 and plant 12, my Nova Scotia and St. Quentin, I can track how much is in transit and what's outstanding. So X3 will track that for me when we do intersite transfers. Of course, we have some other totals in here, so I can look at my totals and see how much I've received this year, how much I've used. A lot of those things I can drill into and look at more reporting data on the rest of this. Calculated data. X3 will calculate my safety stock, what it thinks it should be, what my reorder threshold should be, maximum stock. So here's my enter data, and here's what X3 thinks it should be based on my history. And then when I'm doing my recommended reorder reports, MRP reports, you can tell the system whether you want to use your data that you've entered or use its data that it's calculated. There's some manufacturing information, our routings, bills of materials, things like that we can set up at our product site record. Costing is kind of interesting. So we have some different choices for costing. This one is using average cost. Let me just bring up our costing methods real quick. We can use FIFO, LIFO, standard cost, and average cost, and then also average lot cost. If this is a lot managed product, we can track cost by each lot of product if we wish. This is useful for commodities and other things that have prices that fluctuate. Every time we receive something in, we can associate the purchase cost or the manufacturer cost of that lot with that specific lot all the way until we sell it to make sure we're not losing money on any specific lots. We can add overhead to products as we're moving those around. So every time we do something, we might want to add like a freight or handling or something like that. And that was kind of like a landed cost update to cost as we do like intersite transfers and whatnot. We can drill into our cost. So here's our average cost for this product, 2.2. I think I'm in US dollars right now. But if I drill into this average cost breakdown, this is where I was talking about before of our different cost groups. If this was set up with different material cost families, I could see component cost, packaging cost, etc., 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 all the way through. If this is a manufactured product, I can start looking at my machine cost, labor cost, overhead cost. So X3 is tracking all those individual costs that comes up with this total cost. I don't have a good example on this product, but X3 will track all those individual cost layers for me, cost families, and let me report on those or look at those. Of course, I see my last receipt cost. This could be either from a purchase order coming in or the last time I manufactured this product, if this is something that I'm building. I have my cycle count history down here. I can see the last time I counted. I can look at all my history, so I can kind of see my variances of my counts if I have a problem with this product over time. This is easy to see. And typically we use this to look at, are people counting the wrong unit of measures? They're counting cases, but we're actually counting maybe units within the case or something like that. So sometimes we see those variances, but this kind of gives us a history of our cycle count accuracy. And some other information out here. This is where we can set a supplier on our product site record. So we saw that we had suppliers on our item master that would be globally across our entire organization, but we might want to override that and say for this product site record for my Nova Scotia site, here's my supplier that I want to use. I can set their priority and then make them a default supplier for this product. So that is kind of a high-level overview of our product item master setup. Now let's look in and see how we can start using some of these features. So we're back on our product page right now. I'm going to go look at a product that has some data in here. It's kind of interesting. So let's go to, I think I'll use one of our food products because they have some activity in my demo data that would be interesting. So I'm going to go to my product page and I'm going to clear my filter first of all. And I'm going to find finished good 300. Here we go. Now I have a lot of actions over here that I can go look at. I can go look at all my orders for this product. So I can look at all my quotes that are outstanding. So I can click on this and I would see all my quotes that are for this product. I don't have any, so I'm just going to close that out. Go back to my item master, but I have the ability to look at quotes, sales orders, invoices, etc., etc. I can go look at my work orders. But what I wanted to show, what's kind of interesting, are these stock by sites, projected stock, available stock. So the first thing I can do is go look at stock by site. So what this is showing me is this product. Now my default site for my user is this NA021, so it's just showing me that one site. But what it's showing me here is three things: available stock, on sales orders, on manufacturing or purchase orders. So available stock is what I have on hand, 195. This orange line is what I have on sales orders. I have 1,100 units on sales orders, and then I have 703 that I am building. I'm manufacturing this product, so these are manufacturing. If I'm looking at a raw material that's on order, would be my open POs for this product. This gives me the graphical view, but here is just a text version up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my site record out right now. So my default site is that plant 21. If I blank that out and click on search again, I see all the product site records for this product, which becomes interesting because maybe I don't have it at my default site, but if someone else has this product, maybe I'll ship it to a customer from another site. So X3 lets you look across your entire organization and see where this product is at. So this is a little bit more interesting. So I see all my sites here, and I can see my stocking unit and measure at each site. But what's interesting is, notice these columns here. My stock internal, that's my on-hand quantity that I physically have. So in this situation at my site FRO21, I have 348 units on hand. But X3 is telling me I only have 200 available, and that's because I have allocations out there. I have allocated 148. You can see allocated internal over here 100, and I must have something else going on, some other ones that are blocked or on a delivery possibly already. But I only have 200 that I can actually commit to sell because they're allocated already or in process of being sold. So I have 610 on sales orders, and I'm manufacturing 144 units. So X3 is tracking all this information for me and kind of giving me a snapshot of what's going on. So I have 200 there, I have 650 over here, and you can see I don't have any other transactions going on at my GB021. Nothing on sales orders, I'm not building anything, I have nothing allocated, so I strictly have 600 on hand and they're all available. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm going to go back and show another view of this inventory that's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more useful, and that is my projected stock and my available stock. They're both useful features, so we're going to drill into those. So I came down here and I said stock by site. Now let's go look at projected stock. What X3 is doing is taking all those transactions that are out there, and it's kind of linking them up and showing me what I would have. Now what this is doing is it's showing me the dates on each transaction. So I have my work orders, I have my sales orders. If everything executes exactly as currently scheduled, here's what my expected stock will be every day. So you can see we have a lot of these, see what these are, these SOSs. These are sales orders suggested. These are my forecast. I have a sales forecast for this product, and so that's what's consuming all the stock. I can actually come up here. If I go into criteria, I have options of what I can turn on or off. So I'm going to say I'm going to turn off my forecast and just use actual sales orders. And now when I search in here, a little bit more streamlined. So when I turn off my sales forecast, I get a little bit more accurate list. So here's my work order firms. So I'm doing 175 on a work order, and I must have already done 172 of them because I only have 3 remaining on that work order. But after that work order is done, I'll have 198 units on hand. That's my expected stock. And then I have some customer order for 1,000. I already have 762 allocated. I'm short 328. So if you do the math, so the 372 already allocated, so that's why it's already out of my expected stock. But I'm 328 short, so if I take the 198, subtract it from the 328, I should come up with a negative 130. I have another sales order, negative 230, and I have a work order on this day. And then once I finish this work order for 700, my on-hand quantity on that day is going to be 470. So basically what this is doing is taking each transaction in the system and saying that if I do all these on the date that they're scheduled, here's what my expected stock is going to be on a daily basis. So that's kind of nice to see what I have on hand, kind of my rolling stock. So this is kind of a sequential list of all these transactions. So let's go back and just look at one more, and that's my available stock, and that's a little bit more concise view. So this one, the projected stock, shows me every transaction out there and the stock after that transaction. If I go look at my available stock, it kind of puts them into buckets. And then what it does here is you see each week, or I can set this as weekly. Yeah, this is defaulting to week. So at each week, it just shows me the 29th, the 6th, the 13th, the 20th. It shows me what my available to promise is each day. On the previous screen, remember when we were done with all those work orders and sales orders, we had 470 available. So you can see that this is showing me that I don't have any transactions on these time in these buckets, so it's just staying at 470. But I would see some numbers up here if I had sales orders and work orders. They would show numbers up here, and then my available to promise line here would change if I had any transactions in the future. But this is kind of nice. It gives me a concise view by week, or I can look at it by day or by month too, of what I have available to promise on any given week. So it kind of gives me an overview of when I have capacity, when I have products available to be able to sell to a customer. So those are some of the neat features we can start looking at after we start getting some history in here, some data in here. You know, those projected stock by site, projected stock, available stock, all nice information. There's a lot of other lookups and inquiries on this right panel as well. One thing I'll mention is product site creation. So if I create a new item master, I can go in and actually use this little tool and actually create those records at all my product sites. So if this product needs to live at 3 different sites, I can click this, this, and this, and hit creation, and it creates those product site records. So when I create a new item master, I don't have to go in and create, if I have 12 different warehouses or sites, I don't have to go in and create 12 more individual records. There's some tools to automate some of that, make it a little bit more efficient for me. So that is kind of our setup, some of the inquiries we can start using. Let's go and look at a couple more features in here. Couple things. Let's go look at our warehousing first of all. As I mentioned, we can have default locations set up in X3. And let's go look at our warehouse setup. So X3 lets you set up individual locations, but it lets you set up location types as well. And location types is kind of like a grouping of individual types. So we might have long-term storage, or it might be different sections of our storage yard or our warehouse or whatnot. We might have an outside storage, we might have inside storage. So those are different location types. Then we have different bins, rows, racks, whatever we want to create. We're pretty flexible. X3 doesn't really care how you set those up as long as you have some kind of structured approach. So you set up the location types first of all. Let me give you an example of some of those. We set up these location types by warehouse. So here's our NA11 site. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 different location types at our Nova Scotia plant. We have a quality control section where we're doing our inspections to make sure that raw materials or finished goods meet our standards. We have a loan type. And what a loan type is we're loaning stock to customer. So you see the the location category, that is called customer. So we can track, or we can look at everything within location type loan and see everything that we've loaned to our customer. And that's what these are really for, is grouping and reporting our inventory reports, you know, at different locations. But we also set up different rules on these location types too. So when we're looking at our storage, so here is our storage. This will be like a internal warehouse or something like that. We can set up whether we can only store a single product per location, whether it have dedicated products, locations per product, if it's capacity managed. We can turn these flags on or off if we wish. We can put dimensions on our locations too. This is more important for like liquid storage tanks. If we have a tank, we can put how many what the capacity is of that tank, and then we make sure we don't purchase more than will fit in our tank. Things like that we can start doing. And then once I'm looking at this location type, let's actually go in and do an inquiry. So here's our storage location. I can do an inquiry, and I can see all those locations created at our Nova Scotia in our storage location. So here is all of our location codes. Cooler A, you can see in Cooler A we have actually occupied by all these different products. So we have these different products in here. And let's go down to our storage location, STO01. We have more products in there. We have some beef hanging in there, it looks like. Let's go to our next page. And then here's the rest of it. So here is, we have some iPads in storage location 14. And we have our flags on here, whether it's a single product, dedicated, whether it's occupied. Some of these locations might be empty if there's nothing in them. So this is just showing us what is sitting in each one of these locations. X3 is tracking the product, the lot number. Here's an example of where we have versioning turn on a product. We can see what version of that product. So we have a Samsung Galaxy phone version A, B, C, and D. So we have 4 different versions of that item master in inventory. And then here's our quantity that we have in those locations. So X3 is tracking all that information for us. Stock quantity, the status. Here's our A, B, C, D status. Or I'm sorry, our A, Q, and R status. A means is available stock. If we had quality issues, they would be sitting in our quality control location type. And we can see our allocations in here. And these identifiers are where we start talking about license plating or pallet IDs. And so we have a couple pallet IDs turned on for a couple products here in this location, etc., etc. Then we can see the date of that transaction. So so that is kind of our location drill in. Again, you create your locations, you create your location types. You might have just one location type called storage, or you might have multiple location types to store different products. Sometimes we have like shop supplies. Well, that's not a good example because those are usually non-stock items. You might have a tool room maybe or something like that that have high value raw materials, maybe put in a cage, inventory cage or something like that. So you can create a cage as a location type, and then you actually track bins and rows within your cage if you wanted to. Or sometimes we just have one location within a location type. Like yard might be a location type, and then yard might be a location too. So we just store it outside somewhere and we're not really concerned about where it's at. But we can track individual bill rows, bins, racks, things like that. So that's kind of what this is showing. And then we can move inventory around from location to location too. Of course, we have some tank storage. In this example, we have like a long-term storage, and then we have like our pick line. And this pick line is set up for replenishment so that whenever this location 502 falls below a certain quantity, we would go to our long-term storage and do a transfer over and restock our pick line if that's what we need to do. Some other functionality within X3 is, we can use our dashboards with calendars. So we can have, we can look at a calendar view of like, this is our receiving workbench. This would show us all our POs that are coming in today. Or shipping workbench, we can look at a calendar. I can go look at today. And if I had any data out here, I would see all the sales orders I need to ship today. So kind of gives me a quick view of what's going on, what I need to worry about today, what I need to get ready, things like that. So that's kind of the warehouse setup in X3, the location management, etc., etc. A couple things. Let's go back into distribution. Let's go into warehousing. One thing I'll mention is, so we can do all the stock transactions that you need to do. Miscellaneous issues, miscellaneous receipts would be adjustments if you're short a product or found a product that's not in inventory. You can make a stock count change with these miscellaneous transactions. Lot modification, maybe I change a lot number or something like that, I would do the lot modification. Intersite transfers, I can go in and transfer product from inventory site to inventory site. Of course, I can do receipts, put away, I can pick for sales orders. All these things are built in. These little RF circles are referring to the handheld devices, what we call the ADC module, automatic data collection. So I can go in and do a miscellaneous, or I can go in and do a intersite transfer. Let me do a miscellaneous receipt. I can go in and do a miscellaneous receipt through X3, and this is the screen. I can go in and say the date, the site, the product numbers, and then how much I'm bringing into inventory. I can also do that through my handheld device without having to come to the X3 screen. So I can use these RF screens. So these are built into X3. This is available. And these screens are really streamlined, trimmed down, so it's only the required information I need to record that transaction. So that's called the ADC. That is built into X3, and we can use the barcode scanners, the handheld, what we call RF devices, radio frequency devices. So you can use those across your warehouse as long as you have internet connectivity. Obviously you can use those and update X3 in real time, or inquiry. Sometimes we do stock by site. We can look at detailed stock with those handheld devices as well. But what these RF circles are showing you is all the transactions you can do in X3 with those devices, which is pretty much all inventory transactions. I can do work order tracking, work order completion, picking, put away, all those things can be done with those handheld ADC devices. Let's talk a little bit about the MRP function. So obviously when we're running X3, we're probably using MRP to generate some of our work orders possibly, or our purchase orders. So let's talk about that real quick. So when we set up those rules on the planning tab on the product site record, we're telling it how much we want to store, safety stock, maximum capacity, things like that. We're also defining whether we're manufacturing that product or we're purchasing it. And so MRP looks at those settings and determines whether we need to build it or buy it. And that's what MRP does. Material requirements planning is looking at our firm sales orders, our sales forecast, and determining what raw materials we need to purchase to produce our finished goods, or what work orders we need to generate to build those finished goods to ship to a customer. And so it's all set up from the inventory planning tab, what our settings are, and then MRP runs, and then we get, for example, purchasing suggestions. I'm not going to go through the purchasing suggestions. That's going to be a purchasing overview. So I want to focus more on the inventory side. But those settings do, from the inventory module, do control our MRP run, what we're generating and whatnot. Now, when we set up those product site records at planning tab, we can go by MRP, which is looking at demand. We also have reorder point that we can do, which is kind of an MRP type thing, but it's more a statistical rewarding. It's looking at our on-hand quantity and maybe open sales orders, and then just open work orders, and then telling us how we need to purchase. So typically what we talk about is MRP versus reorder point. MRP is usually for high dollar, long lead time items. Reorder point would be more things I can get in with a couple days. If I can get from my local distributor or something within a day or two, I'd probably just use reorder point, and when I fall below my safety stock, I would place a order to my distributor and it'll be here in 1 or 2 days. And so I kind of run these separately just to limit the information in each one. MRP results, if you have hundreds of finished goods and thousands of raw materials, there can be a lot of results coming through MRP, and so we kind of separate the MRP to the reorder point just depending on what the need is and what you're trying to facilitate. I mean, time or reducing inventory. So we have different methods we can use, and sometimes we do everything in MRP, sometimes we kind of split it up. It just depends on what we need to do. What we can do either or. Allocations, there's a lot more features in inventory, but they kind of start really interacting with other modules like allocations. I can go in and let me go into my warehousing. Whoops, let's go into distribution. Warehousing, we have a lot of different inquiry screens for inventory, lot traceability, stock by lots. We can look at our transaction detail, but this is what I was talking about before, just to give you a different view. We set up our our site record as our warehouses. We set up our location type and then our locations. So kind of a 3-tier: warehouse, location type, location, where we're going to store things at. This just gives some different views of what we've been talking about. One thing I'll mention, I'm going to go into my mega menu and go into stock, because there's some things that are not on my process map. The license plating I haven't talked about, but license plating in X3 lets me take and create a palette. So here is a palette, and what this is basically giving a number to a palette. I can print out a barcode, put it on there, and then that palette ID identifies everything on that palette: how many cases, how many lots. Now if you're only stacking single items on a palette, license plating may not be too advantageous, but the license plating comes in handy when you have different products on the same palette or different lots on the same palette. You don't have to what you can do is when you're building up that pallet, you can identify, even if it's the same pallet, each lot that's going on that pallet, and then you just have one number to scan instead of individual boxes and lot numbers. So it's kind of consolidating maybe multiple different stock lines into one ID number that you can scan. Very nice for people that need it. People that don't need it, we usually don't turn on. So it really depends on your inventory. If you're not doing lot tracking, license plating probably isn't too advantageous. But if you do tracking lots and you have a lot of mixed lots on the same pallets or storage locations, this becomes a little bit more interesting. But this is built into X3, and for some people this is a real time saver. But I want to talk to you much more about that because it doesn't fit everybody. One other thing I want to talk about on inventory control is the assignment workbench, number one. And what the assignment workbench allows me to do is it allows me to reserve inventory for certain transactions. So let's say we have a raw material that we're buying. Let's say we're buying pinto beans, for example. Good. So we have purchase orders out there. Here's a supplier order, which is a purchase order. Now what we can do with the assignment workbench is we can link this supplier order directly to a work order. If this is going to be a raw material that's going into a manufacturing. Let me bring up a finished good. It's a little bit more interesting on the sales side of this. Let's go look at a finished good. I don't have any sales orders for that. Let's look at a standard bike. I want to find something that has both work orders and on hand, or work orders and sales orders, because that's more interesting. Then I'm gonna get rid of my product site record. Go look at a different product here. Try to find something that has some better results here. Let's go look at this one. Doesn't exist for this site. I don't have some good data to show, but what this lets me do though is it lets me assign the output from a work order, say, to a sales order. So if I have a work order going on to produce pallets and the customer has a sales order for pallets, I can come into this assignment workbench and assign that work order to that sales order. And that's what this does. It lets me click on a customer order and a work order, and then it's almost like a pre-allocation. So when the inventory is on hand, I can allocate it to a sales order, but this assignment workbench lets me pre-allocate. And this is nice if I'm just turning things around. If I'm a distributor and I placed a purchase order for a specific item for a customer, I can use the assignment workbench, which would reserve that purchase order stock coming in to that specific sales order for that customer. And I can use this for raw materials going into a work order, or the output from a work order going to a sales order. So if I'm doing a special run, a special work order for a certain product, I can go into the assignment workbench and make sure it's going to a specific sales order so that the right customer gets that product. So that's what the assignment workbench does. And the last thing I just wanted to bring up real quick is the allocations in X3. So that was the assignment workbench we were looking at. I can go into my stock table and let's go look at our allocations. Let's go look at global allocations. So I don't know if I have any for this product, but this will show me all the allocations for a certain product to a certain sales order. So let's go look at 100. Let's go look at let's go look at this product. Let's go look at our standard keyboard. I don't have any allocations for this product, but this would show me all the sales orders that I have reserved for this product from this warehouse. Again, this is just showing me, this is more of an inquiry screen to showing me data, but I just want to show you that X3 is tracking all that information behind the scenes. I can go look it up. I can use that however I wish. A couple of things I'll mention is that we can print stock labels. So every time we receive product in, either from a purchase order or a purchase order or a work order, we can go in and print those labels out. When we do the transaction, we will print it out, but we don't need to print labels right away. That's why we kind of use the location type of doc, so we can have everything, do a quick receipt, put it on the dock, and as we start putting it away, we can start using these features like printing labels if we need to put our own labels on that product and then put it away. So here's everything that's been receipted in that said it was flagged for printing labels. On the item master, I didn't mention it, but on the item master you can flag that you want to print labels for that product, and then we can have different label formats for each item, and then we can print those out. So X3 tracks all our receipts for those products and then gives us this dashboard to go through and print those labels. So we can batch print like a couple times throughout the day, or we can print labels every time we receive a product. However it fits your business needs, we can set this up. But I just want to mention that we do print stock labels whenever we have stock coming into our warehouse if we need to do that. So that's built into the system. And then let's talk about inter-site transfers real quick, because that's a nice feature of tracking inventory per site. So in X3 there's actually two ways to do inter-site transfers. This is the quick way. This is an immediate transaction. When I go in and record this, that it is immediately done and inventory is updated. Sometimes this works for people. Sometimes they need what I refer to as the long form or the long way of doing a stock transfer. So let me go through this short method first, the quick method. So if I want to transfer stock, I just come in and create a new transaction. I say the site that I want to ship from, give it the date. I can fill these things in. I actually have to fill in my destination site, so we're going to say we're going to move that to site 22, and then we have to say what product are we going to move. Let me see what product we have on hand. Let's see if we have any pinto beans on hand. It's not at site 302. So that doesn't exist at our destination site, so we can't move it from site 21 to 22. So that's why it was complaining about that. Let's just say that we're going to move some beef. And we don't have any product on hand at location 21, but if it was at 21, we would see all our lot numbers, all our quantities, all the locations where that product's at. We could choose which one we're going to ship. It brings it into our transaction. We go ahead and create that transaction. And when we create that transaction, X3 immediately does the stock move and moves it from site 21 to site 22. So this is the immediate inter-site transfer. So we go in and just record it. So this is if I don't need to do anything else. There's another long form of the inter-site transfer where I can actually do a sales order, purchase order document between my two sites. And so my destination site, I would create a purchase order and say, hey, purchase this from my sister site. So in this situation, I would go in and say that I'm doing a sales order. And you don't actually have to create both transactions. X3 will do the mirror transaction for you automatically. So if I create a sales order and it's flagged for inter-site, it will create the purchase order from the other side, the other plant, automatically. So I don't need to do both of those. So in this situation, I can say, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong side. I usually start with the purchase order because the purchase order is what my demand's going to be. So I go in and I create my purchase order. Create a new transaction. I'm ordering this to site 22. And my suppliers, I actually put my other site in. And then I have to make sure that all my records are set up correctly. But basically, I do a inter-site purchase order. And then X3 will create the sales order site for the reverse of these two so that I'm selling it from 21 and the 22 is the purchasing. Now it doesn't actually create any invoices. X3 knows that these are inter-site transactions. It just does the sales order, purchase order to facilitate your paperwork. And now when you do the short form inter-site transfer, it's immediate. There's nothing in transit. But when I do this long form, when I do this purchase order, sales order, offset, when I ship that sales order, when I say that I'm that product has left my dock, X3 knows that I'm shipping it to my other site, and so it flags that inventory as being in transit. Then I'll stay in transit till I receipt the purchase order at the other site. When I receipt the purchase order at the other site, it knows it's no longer in transit, and it moves the inventory into my destination site, and updates my GL, obviously my on-hand values for each product by each site. And then, like I said, there's no invoices involved, but that is the long form, and that lets me generate a bill of lading, tracks my in-transit stock so I know what's outstanding, what's being moved around, and it does all the GL encoding. Well, both sites, the short form and the long form, obviously do the GL transfer of inventory from the various financial sites, but the long form does track the in-transit inventory for me, and we saw that on the product site record. There was an in-transit inventory count, so the X3 is tracking how much is being shipped from site to site. So that's just some of the high-level features of the inventory control module in X3. Thanks for listening.